Hello and welcome to the command phase. My name is Mark and thank you so much for joining me. We all know Warhammer can be a very expensive hobby. With all the incredible high quality miniatures, hobby tools, paints, rules and accessories, it all adds up. In this video we're going to take a look at a variety of ways that you could save some money in this hobby in the hope that it makes it much more affordable for you, even if you decide to just buy more models with the savings. If you have any money saving tips that I haven't covered, please pop them in the comments section below to help fellow hobbyists. So without any further ado, let's get stuck in. The first place to start is with Games Workshop's discount products themselves, and typically there are a few available throughout the year and some to keep an eye out for. First up are the starter sets, which you'll find bring a pretty hefty discount in comparison to buying all the kits individually. These boxes typically contain the two main factions for the edition, alongside a small amount of terrain and the rules at a variety of prices from £32.50 all the way up to £125. Using the 40k Ultimate Starter Set as an example, the box nets you two of the current combat patrols inside for the Space Marines and Tyranids at a 35% discount compared to buying those two discounted boxes separately, and a whopping 56% of buying all of the miniatures separately, which makes it a fantastic deal to get started with, plus all the extras on top. Speaking of which, the Combat Patrols for 40k and Spearhead boxes for Age of Sigmar are Games Workshop's entry points into different armies, replacing the Old Start Collecting and Vanguard boxes respectively. These offer you a good discount for the models inside compared to buying everything individually. Some of these are better than others for value or getting into an army, which I've explained in this video for Warhammer 40k if you wanted to have a full breakdown of each. But typically you're looking at around a 30% discount for the models, which is pretty good, especially with some being perfect to grab multiple times to build a force. One thing worth noting, with each codex release the older ones are being rotated out, so might be worth seeing if it's worth grabbing one now before it's replaced. Then we have a few limited run boxes to keep an eye out for. First up is at the start of each game edition, Games Workshop offers a release box like Leviathan for 40k and Dominion for Age of Sigmar. This box typically provides some exceptional value with two decent sized forces and a rulebook to get started with. Even if you aren't interested in both factions, it's typically worth picking up and selling off the other half on the secondary market to make the price even better for you with a little bit of work. Then there are the limited army release boxes, which typically come out about a month before Games Workshop releases the individual kits and books. These are a great way to get started with an army if you like all of the components inside, and typically will contain all new kits, plus a limited edition codex and data cards like this Deathwing Assault box that launched recently. This can offer a really nice entry point if you know you want all of the items inside. But be warned, these, like the next box I'm going to talk about, are in limited quantity and sell out very fast. Speaking of selling out fast, we have the annual Christmas Battle Force boxes, where we're talking a matter of minutes for some to fully sell out. These offer some really great value and arguably some of the best starting points for an army. I've personally utilised the Custodes Watchers and the Gate box in the past to start a new army, and the 2023 boxes were equally as good. Games Workshop announced these a few weeks before they go out on pre-order, so if you do decide you fancy starting that force, you'll have a little bit of notice of when to try your luck in grabbing one. Again, these are sadly limited runs, so best of luck to you getting one. Last of the Games Workshop related things is a wide variety of codexes, both standard and limited edition, crusade rules and custom dice for each army when they release. For this, I'd say only buy the things you really need or plan on utilising a lot. For example, if you have multiple armies but only really play one or two, I'd stick to these being the ones you buy a codex for, especially with 10th having the indexes available for the armies that haven't had their codex releases yet. You can always utilise these rules as they are typically kept in each codex so far. Of course, if you enjoy the lore aspects of the hobby and like having all of the codexes on the shelves, then obviously go for it. I'm not here to say how you should spend your money, just to give you a little idea of savings that could be made. This is probably the easiest way to save some money on pretty much everything you can buy from Games Workshop, and that is utilising discount retailers online or your local game store. As these companies get the product at trade prices, they can offer a bit more of a competitive price for the customer, typically somewhere between 10 and 20% off the RRP, which can certainly add up pretty quickly. I've popped a link in the description below for a Reddit post with a list of retailers in a variety of countries around the world to be able to help you out. You may even find that your local game store offers discounts on Games Workshop products as well, so it also helps to support them too. The only products you may not find at much of a discount, if at all, are Forge World products alongside the direct from Games Workshop only items, but a huge amount of model, hobby supply and Black Library catalogue can be found from these stores, so 100% worth utilising for your hobby needs. The second-hand market can really open up some bargains for you, whether it's picking up individual kits to Kitbashing Character, some built, painted, brand new on sprue or in box for models that someone didn't want anymore to potentially full armies still in boxes. There are always some interesting opportunities you can find on the likes of eBay or Facebook Marketplace if you look in the right places. Something that does come up very regularly is halves or individual models from jewel boxes like the starter sets or release boxes, with someone only wanting half of them themselves. This allows you to pick up models that you'd like at a cheaper price than buying a box yourself, like the Space Marine or Tyranid starter halves compared to the Combat Patrol box. The individual kits from these boxes also end up being greatly reduced as a result of these, plus rulebooks from those released sets if you wanted a physical copy at a greatly reduced cost. If you do fancy a bit more work to potentially grab yourself a bargain, people do end up selling off their painted armies or started hobby projects they've fallen out of love with at a reduced cost than buying new. You can then either touch them up, paint over them if they've only been primed, or even stripping the paint off the models with the likes of Dettol or Simply Green to start again from fresh to make them yours. The latter is certainly a lot more work, but honestly, I've done this a few times, plus removing my own paint schemes as I decided to change them once I started painting my army. If you'd like a full breakdown of that process from myself, let me know in the comment section below and I'll get a video made up on how to do it. Over the past few years, Hachette Partworks have released a variety of magazines covering both Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar, offering a subscription service to pick up models at a pretty large discount. Roughly 33 to 45% of buying all of the models separately before adding in all of the paints you get as well. These have covered Space Marines vs Death Guard in 8th edition, Imperium vs Necrons in 9th edition, plus Mortal Realms and currently Stormbringer for Age of Sigmar players. We also now have an up-and-coming Combat Patrol magazine, which at the time of recording is still in its testing phase, but more than likely will go ahead later on in the year. So you can expect to get some pretty nice bargains on a variety of different factions. Where this truly shines though is with some local game stores like Darksphere here in the UK and Forbidden Planet, often allowing you to pre-order or purchase individual issues, which is where you can grab some really heavily discounted models, with some as much as 70 to 80% off RRP in a single issue. These issues are typically priced at £9 or $12, although some LGS stores may well sell you with a small discount on top. Some issues don't tend to provide as much money off as others, so if you can look ahead to see the contents of the issues, you may be able to get the ones you're after. Even if you don't manage to get them that way, often you'll find these on eBay or Facebook Marketplace for a little more than the cost of the magazine would have been, but still less than purchasing the model from Games Workshop directly, so bargains still to be had there. Then of course you do have some factions in the game being more expensive than others to collect. This is mainly due to how elite or horde the army is, the age of the cost of the kit, and the quality of the Combat Patrol boxes. I recently did a breakdown of how much a competitive list from each faction costs before the January balance data slate, so you can get an idea of what to expect. While I'd say when choosing a faction it should be what you like the look of the most and can see yourself enjoying building, painting and playing with. But if budget is a concern to you, then it might be worth taking this into consideration. At the end of the day, it's completely up to you how you hobby. This is just information for you to do with as you'd like. These next few, I must admit, I feel a little hypocritical talking about, as I'm certainly guilty of some of these, but it may well help you to slow down a little and budget a little bit better. Something that I'm trying to do better this year. First up is trying to finish a box before buying another. Again, easier said than done. But if you can do this, you'll end up saving more in the long run by not having a nice pile of potential sitting in the corner of your hobby room, which you may never get to. Plus, you'll have the satisfaction of not only playing with your painted miniatures, but you can also then figure out what your army needs to improve before making your next purchase. If this is something you feel you couldn't achieve, I'd certainly avoid buying an entire 2,000 point army in one go, as it'll take a huge amount of time to complete it, and you may find it feels like a chore as you work your way through it. Plus, with loads of exciting models being released in the meantime, you could find partway through the project that you want to do something else and it falls by the wayside. It certainly takes a lot of willpower and discipline to get an army done in one go. Fear of missing out or FOMO is a pretty big tactic these days, with many companies and artificial scarcity being used to drive it. I'm aware this is another easier said than done one with the quality of the newer kits, or trying to keep up with the latest releases for your army to get those units onto the tabletop as soon as possible. But if, and it's a pretty big if, you are able to delay purchases later on, you may find you either don't want those models anymore for your force, or they're back in stock with no issues trying to get hold of them. This again helps with the boxes not piling up in your pile of potential, never to be looked at again. Chasing the meta is probably the biggest way to spend money in this hobby, and something that apart from the top level tournament players is not worth your time or money to do. Each codex release or balanced data slate can switch things up drastically, causing you to have to change up your list and fork out loads of money for that 3 of that new hot unit that could be good for just a couple of months. For me, buying models that you like to be able to create a well-rounded force is a far better idea, as no matter how the meta shifts, you'll have units that you like and enjoy. Plus, with the changes to the rules being so regular, you may find out some of these units may be stronger later on down the line. Onto the hobby side of things now, and first up would be to shop around for your hobby tools and paints. There are a huge variety of brands available to choose from in each of these spaces, whether it's Citadel, Vallejo, Army Painter, or others for your painting needs. I'd always stick to acrylic paints designed for miniatures, but apart from that you have loads of choice to pick whichever you'd prefer to use. Experimenting and finding which is best for you and the way you like to paint is the most important thing. There are no right or wrong paint brands here. If you're worried from, say, moving away from Citadel paints, you can typically find conversion charts for paints that if you're following a tutorial or colour scheme, but using a different brand of paint to the one that's being shown. In terms of tools, again with there being loads of brands, you can pretty much spend as much or as little as you'd like, but there will always be cheaper alternatives for a hobby knife, sprue clippers and paint pots, although to be fair, I just use a mug. Another useful tool is a wet palette, which you can make your own cheaper if you prefer to do that, using a Tupperware container, a sponge and parchment paper. Sticking with the modelling side of the hobby, magnetising weapon options and such for miniatures can save you a lot of money in the long run if you wanted to put the work in. This is a great way to be able to make adjustments to the gaming meta a lot easier than, say, hobby surgery by removing a gun or arm from a model just to replace it. In the case of, say, a Ravager, you can magnetise the turret so you can make it into a raider if you needed to as well. Plus, you can also utilise magnets to make storing or transporting your models a lot easier too. Utilising a Bitz store can sometimes net you extra models from a kit depending on the cost of them, with all the extra weapon options and heads you get in the box. For example, something I did in the past with a unit of Scarab Cold Terminators was that I bought an extra body for about £3, and then I could use this to make 5 Terminators and a Terminator Librarian from the one box. I'm sure there are other great examples of this out there, and if you have any yourself, pop them in the comment section below. This then comes to my next point, which is keeping hold of all of your extra bits, as you never know if you may need them later on down the line. With the changes to the way that we make lists in 10th edition, weapon options are no longer paid for individually, but rather all included in the squads. So for all of the models you made bare bones in 9th edition, having kept the extra bits would have saved you a bit of money to put them onto your models rather than having to buy new ones. I tend to buy a hobby sorting box for each of my armies to store and organise the bits. It might not be an immediate money saver, but it could be in the long run. The last really useful part of keeping all of these bits is to kitbash models to create notable characters or models for less money than they would cost directly. This not only saves money for those kits, but seeing kitbashed models or units on the board I personally find really cool to see and adds a lot of personality to your force. One of my favourite examples of this is Matthew Beavis's fully converted Grok Guard army, which is just incredible. There is so much charm and character in this force, and just an idea of what could be achieved with some time and love. The last of the modelling money saving tips is shopping around for basing materials. Whether it's just getting a texture paint, where you'll get far more for your money from Vallejo than the Citadel variants, but it's something you could easily make yourself. Plus, everyday items can be utilised to make into bases, like the bottom of a fruit or veg punnet could become interior walkways, mosquito netting can be used for a textured metal flooring, plus grabbing some cork coasters or placemats from IKEA and breaking them up into tactical rocks or rocky surfaces is one of my favourites. That, and with sand, small rocks and flock all being found very cheaply online, you'll have a wide variety of options to make your bases look really interesting without costing the earth. So there we have a fair number of ways to save a bit of money in this hobby. Even if you only ended up utilising online or local game stores for the discount from this list, you'll still end up saving a fair chunk in the long run. Let me know down in the comment section below if you have any money saving tips not mentioned here. It'd be a great way to share this with the other viewers and help make the hobby more affordable, or even just to be able to buy more models with the same amount of money. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more, please hit that like and subscribe button, as it really helps the channel to grow. Thank you all so much for watching the command phase, and I'll see you in the next video.